Hi, everyone. I'm Bethany, and for this assignment, I chose to explore the concept of academic libraries as hyperlinked environments, community hubs, and spaces for connection. So, to discuss this concept, though, I have to give a little bit of context of my experience and just share a bit about me. So, in thinking about hyperlinked environments, I'm also thinking a lot about my last library position, which was within a private university for architecture and design. And in my time there, the university president became convinced that the library didn't add any value to the school. And she was pushing really hard for it to be replaced by a coffee shop to generate revenue for the school. Of course, I immediately felt prickly, right? Like, what do you mean we don't add value to the school? But then I kind of had to take a step back and really consider if there may be some truth behind her statement. So I started asking students what they thought about her proposition, and it was pretty divided. Our regulars were horrified because they relied on our services, but our more casual visitors a lot of times reported that a coffee shop would actually be a lot more inviting of a space to relax and hang out between classes. So that got me thinking, and I started asking questions about what kind of space they needed and how could a library maybe begin to meet those needs. And there was a really prominent trend in the answers, which is that students just wanted a space to relax and decompress. The architecture program at that school was incredibly demanding and very competitive, and students felt like there was nowhere on campus to go to unplug from that stress. um, for a long time, the library offered resources that were just strictly academic. And when funding was finally available to provide more of the fun stuff, the library bought resources without really knowing what its student wanted or what would actually get used. So, for instance, our library was full of these limited edition chairs, which had been created by a very famous designer whose name escapes me at the moment. And they were beautiful, but incredibly uncomfortable. Our head librarian had tried to sort of lure people into the library by adding a lot of cool items like a drone that could be checked out, Arduino kits, Lego kits, board games, podcasting equipment, and even a PlayStation and big screen TV in the corner. So she was funneling all of our funding into these kinds of resources. And the general assumption held by administrators was that nothing was getting used because students just didn't care. And everyone thought that the library was just wasting money. So by the time I started asking questions, many students told me that all these items actually created sort of a loud and chaotic environment for them that was not helpful at all. I had students tell me, it's so cool that you can get things like that in the library, but nobody wants to hang out in there. So learning about the hyperlinked environment in this module, I can't help but think about what that space could have been, and a few key concepts really stand out to me. One of the first key concepts for me is openness, and I keep returning to Dr. Stevens' book, The Heart of Librarianship. And there's one section in particular in chapter 6 where he describes an interaction with an educator who states, I'm paid to have control. I also have a background in teaching, and as an educator, I totally get where that feeling comes from. But the key to building a hyperlinked environment, either within the classroom or within an academic library, is openness. So, the part of this section which really stood out to me is trends include open everything, the significance of informal learning opportunities, and socially focused connected learning. And another key concept that I'm drawing on here is lateral thinking, which kind of piggybacks onto openness if you think about it. Brian Matthews, in his book Cultivating Complexity, shares about lateral thinking as the key to creating real change within academic libraries. And he has this great section where he writes, rather than mechanically following a well worn path, we should allow ourselves to scout along the fringes. This really rang true to me and my experiences working in academic libraries because we will often face pushback against ideas which may sound a little odd or different or go against the grain. So, a big part of lateral thinking is asking, what can a library do? Beyond what libraries are expected to be, what else can a library be? So I'm asking myself, how can I use both openness and lateral thinking to create the space that my students were missing What would that space look like? And what if we just overall reframed spaces as invitation? What if we made a library space that naturally attracted people the way my students described being attracted to a coffee shop because it met their human needs? What if an academic library did more than just meet the study needs of its patrons? And in my experience over the last decade, academic libraries often make the mistake of only serving their students' academic needs. And unfortunately, that really takes, the humanness out of library service. So, a great example of using lateral thinking and openness to consider those human needs in an academic library is Carroll University. So, Carroll University's food share program, I just learned about in this last module. And this program goes beyond academic needs to acknowledge and meet actual human needs for students. Another example of ways to meet human needs is actually right here in my hometown. Our community college library works in tandem with our local LGBT plus center to provide a trans closet library where students and community members can access binders and gender affirming clothing and other personal care products at no cost. So, again, an example of meeting human needs. And I think this fits so well into a hyperlinked library because it's really maintained by the community. All items are donated, and the closet itself is run by volunteers. So it's not cost prohibitive for the library. Mental health services. So this is becoming much more normalized in libraries. And this article is about Myersdale Public Library in Colorado. Great example of libraries meeting a human need. And I'd really like to see more academic libraries offering services and collections like this one, especially through collaboration with other orgs in the community. The Somerset Suicide Prevention Task Force paired with the Myersdale Public Library to create this collection of resources, and it's specifically for suicide prevention. And this initiative was fully funded by the task force. So, again, not cost prohibitive for the library. It's just a matter of collaborating. This to me is a hyperlinked environment. It's sort of a connective node, right, between community members and resources. And I think a collection like this really belongs in academic settings. Several studies have shown that the rate of suicide for people aged 15 to 24 in the US has been dramatically increasing since 2015. And I'll cite that source in my written post. Academic libraries' target audiences fall right into that age group. This is a very human need, and we are in a unique position to meet that need in a safe and welcoming setting. Something else that I've tried to implement in the past is organizing a library led group of walkers for the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention's Out of the Darkness Walk. This is an annual event which happens across many different cities and states and brings together anyone who has an interest in suicide prevention. And often, organizations will sign up together. And I really pushed to host a sign up group. I really pushed to host this group through that university's library, but unfortunately, there was so much pushback that it got shut down. And my direct supervisor literally said to me, libraries are not meant for this kind of thing. And lastly, I just wanted to share the one program I was able to implement at the library. While I wasn't permitted to offer this all year, I was allowed to create programming for Mental Health Awareness Month, which is in May. I organized a month-long meditation program and had guest speakers from various meditation groups throughout San Diego visit the library. Each guest gave a short talk and then led students in a meditative practice from different traditions. So, to close, as I mentioned before, academic libraries are often seen as sort of glorified study halls, strictly for meeting academic needs. And services that meet human needs tend to kind of get relegated to the public library. But students, especially in this really important pivotal moment, many of them are just leaving home. They need resources on campus that libraries are in a unique position to provide.